Okay, we are back to talk about validation of our hypotheses of our business model, and we do this via stakeholder discovery, also known as customer discovery or VOC, voice of the customer. So let's take a look at how do we do this. We use the lean methodology or various aspects of it to validate and test our hypotheses. What are our hypotheses? Those are the 9 elements of a business model canvas. So we need to validate them so that what our thinking is actually validated by the people that matter the most, the customers and stakeholders, maybe vendors, partners, etc. We do this rapidly and iteratively. We do this based on feedback loops, and we refine quickly. The process of doing this is through rigorous experiments and clear metrics. So we will go into some of those details now. We basically test our hypotheses with minimal resources. We want to accelerate the learning we get from the feedback, reduce any wastage of money, time, or resources, and get the product to early customers as soon as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good enough. And over time, it will get better and better. There is a blog link at the bottom here for, at least on the software side, for a minimum viable product, MVP. And looking at it visually from a high level, this is a customer journey map or customer development process. So first there's the search, then there's the execution. Do not skip the search aspect. It is critical and pivotal. It involves a two-step process. First, we discover the unmet need, the pain points, the problems, and then we validate our hypotheses so that we can validate or invalidate and pivot accordingly. Not all of our hypotheses will be validated. If they are, there might be a problem. We might not be thinking critically enough or stress testing it enough. So ideal outcome would be where most of our hypotheses are validated, a few are not, but we gain insights in that process that allow us to adapt and pivot and create even a better business model or strategy to move forward. Once we finish that process, and it's a looped process, so it iterates a few times, we can then move on to the execution where we generate customers, our first customers, and then we retain them and scale them to grow our customers. So let's take a look at what are we testing and validating. Our hypotheses as they relate to our business model, which will include the key elements of value proposition, customer segments, channels, partners, and go-to-market strategy, even things like our revenue model, our pricing model, feature set, all of those things. And then there's a simple 4-step process in which to do this. So first we do discovery, where we figure out and learn what we need to discover. Then we design some experiments, low fidelity experiments, low cost, low time. We execute those experiments, obtain the results, analyze the results, extract the insights, make adjustments or pivots, and then reiterate this process. We do this multiple times until we feel like we're having a great momentum and traction and things are working well. So this process will help us decide if we're allocating our resources optimally, including time, money, talent, and methodology or strategy and tactics. Let's look at customer segmentation for a moment. Who is the customer? Well, there's 6 or 7 dimensions of every customer, and we should understand these well and then do a deep dive to talk to each of these types of customer personas. So there is the user, the person who will come in contact with our solution and actually consume or use our product or service. offering. Then there's the influencer who will influence the user in choosing our product over someone else's, or even deciding whether they need a solution or not. There's the recommender who initially might be word of mouth, but ultimately will recommend to their peers and connections and people in their network. Why is that important? Because studies have shown that users and consumers trust their peer networks and other users and their recommendations. That's why we have reviews and recommendations on social media. The next is economic buyer. We're going to skip the one in orange for a moment. But the economic buyer is the one who is paying for the service. So if your solution is for children, they may not be the economic buyer, the parent might be. If it's a solution for faculty, students, or administrators inside of a school, maybe the procurement office of the school is the economic buyer, and the students are the beneficiaries and the users. There might even be a saboteur. This is the person who thinks they know it all, or maybe they do know more than the average person, and they had a bad experience with the type of solution you're offering in the past, or they think they have a better solution, or maybe they don't feel anything needs to be done. So they're the ones who are going to get in your way. It's the objections, the source of objections, the naysayers, and they could influence the users or the economic buyer or even the recommender. You want to identify the saboteurs or potential saboteurs as early as possible and get to understand them, get to know them, develop a relationship so you can mitigate the risk of the saboteur and neutralize the saboteur. And lastly, you want to make sure when you are pitching to prospective customers, especially if it's enterprise or B2B, business to business, that you are talking to a decision maker, someone who has authority and the mandate to make a decision to buy or greenlight your solution. If they're not the decision maker, you can end up spending and wasting a lot of time and effort and money talking to so many layers of people and committees who then go to vote and have endless meetings to discuss your solution. So try to get to a decision maker as quickly as possible. This chart comes from the book Crossing the Chasm, where it talks about the types of customer segments and where you should start. So innovators, represented by the left dark green or turquoise area under the curve, represent about 2.5% of the customer market, and they're part of the early market. You want to start with the innovators. They're the ones who will take risks early on, even if you don't have a perfect product or solution. They are really enthusiasts, and they want to get going before anybody else. Once you have a few of those, or enough, you then move to early adopters, representing about 13.5% of the market. And those are the visionaries. Those are the ones that can see what you're seeing, they believe in your value proposition and how you articulate it, and they're ready, they're enthusiastic, but right after the innovators. So possibly a little bit more risk averse, but still considered early market. Once you have enough innovators and early adopters, these enthusiasts, you can then cross that chasm and get to the pragmatists, which is the early majority. They represent approximately 1/3 of your customer market segment. The early majority wants to see that there's enthusiasts and early adopters before they will come in as customers, as paying customers. That's important because they have a different risk tolerance or different criteria for decision making and product selection and utilization. So we don't worry about them initially. Laser focus on the niche of innovators and early adopters, the enthusiasts, but make sure you're not getting a false signal, because enthusiasts will try anything, love anything sometimes to a fault, and you may not get real critical feedback from them because they're your fans, early fans. So you do have to take what they say and their enthusiasm kind of with a grain of salt, keep it at bay, and then start focusing on the early majority. The late majority are the more conservative markets. They want to make sure that enough other people, the early majority, have purchased and used the products or solutions, and they like them. They look at reviews and ratings, do a lot of due diligence. They're very conservative in their approach. They're not early adopters, but there's a significant amount of customers in that market segment, another 1/3 approximately. And lastly, you've got the laggards, about 16% of the market, or the skeptics. Those are the ones that no matter what, or no matter how many other people love your product and buy your product and recommend it, they will continue to be skeptical and most likely will never buy. So don't waste your resources of time, money, and talent on the skeptics or conservatives as you start building your early market domination or go-to-market strategy. So we end there for this module, and the next module will be about, well, let's see, we had an idea, we assessed the idea, evaluated it from a commercialization standpoint, and prioritized the product features. We then created a business model. We tested the business model through stakeholder validation or customer discovery and the VOC, voice of the customer. We then took a look at how to define the customer segments and persona and archetype to match our value proposition so we can achieve product market fit. And we looked at the business model canvas. Now we have to actually create and design and develop an MVP, minimum viable product. We do that through prototyping and pilots. Stay tuned.